Will's bedroom was filled with dim light from a small lamp by the window, but inside he felt only a dense darkness that he could not escape. Ever since the fateful night with Luna, when everything was distorted by the blurred boundaries between reality and illusion, between desire and mistake, Will was no longer himself. His eyes were empty, his skin was pale, and each sleeping pill scattered on the table like fragments of a decaying soul. Guilt ate away at him from within, and the most frightening thing was that he could no longer distinguish between nightmare and reality. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Luna, not in the gentle image of the girl who once made his heart flutter, but in the distorted shadow of someone who knew she had control over him. And Luna, when she discovered she was pregnant, did not collapse as people thought. She stood in front of the mirror, touched her belly, and felt a new power forming. Not just Will's child, but the child that could change her position in this world of lies. She knew Will was weak. She knew Bill was scared, and she knew all the cards were in her hands. Luna began to appear wherever Will went, calling him in a voice as soft as mist, but hidden behind it was a command. She said she didn't need him, but her eyes said otherwise, eyes that made him want to run away, but also feel sucked in with no way out. Bill discovered the truth not through a confession, but from a small detail, the broken sleeping pill bottle on the floor. At first he thought Will was just tired, but then the text messages between his son and Luna appeared like a knife stabbing him in the heart. Everything he had tried to build, the image of a strong father, a man in control, began to collapse. Bill understood that the tragedy lay not only in the child in Luna's belly, but in Will himself, disappearing into the darkness of guilt and fear. He stood in the middle of the vast mansion, where every room held traces of power and loss, and felt himself being swallowed by the silence. Fatherhood was not just about protection, it was about facing the truth. And this time the truth made him tremble. Bill tried to control the situation, to negotiate, but every step he took only made things more complicated. Luna was no longer the innocent girl. She began to demand, to threaten in secret, knowing full well that Will would not dare to resist. She understood that Will's greatest fear was not that Bill would find out, but that Luna would leave him, because deep down, she had become a toxic addiction in his mind. Brooke watched it all from the outside, and in her eyes was a mixture of pity and calculation. She knew Bill, knew Will, and also knew that in this world, weakness was always exploited. Brooke says she wants to help, but what she really wants is to control the outcome, to keep Bill close by pretending to be a savior. Hope, on the other hand, sees a part of herself in Luna. She was once caught between love and guilt, between names bigger than herself. But instead of helping, Hope retreats, because she knows that interfering will only make things fall apart faster. Liam is different. He sees Will as he saw himself back then, torn between two women, between right and wrong, between instinct and conscience. He wants to save Will, but he no longer has the power to do so. Each person has a direction, a motive, but all are drawn into the vortex created by Luna, where goodness and evil have no boundaries. Will became disoriented. He drank more each night, and woke up more tired each morning. The nightmares became more real, to the point where he didn't know if he had actually done anything worse than that night. He began to doubt his own memories. Sometimes he remembered Luna making the first move. Sometimes he felt like he was forcing her. The truth shattered into tiny pieces, and guilt became a relentless beast in his mind. Once, when Bill found him unconscious in his room, surrounded by the strong smell of drugs, he understood that his son was crying for help but couldn't find the words. Bill forced himself to stay awake, to push away his emotions and act. But the more he tried to control himself, the deeper he was pulled into Luna's web of lies. She sent ambiguous messages, photos that Bill couldn't ignore, and a terrible thought arose in his mind. Was she trying to make him believe that Will was no longer a victim? From then on, the line between protection and concealment became fragile. Bill began to hide information from Brooke, hide his lawyer appointments, hide his own fear. He knew that if everything fell out, the Spencer family would be dragged down the cliff. But what he didn't expect was that Luna had prepared for that day. She secretly collected evidence, recorded, saved messages, not to blackmail, but to make them never dare to oppose her. Luna knew how to use tears when necessary, knew how to be silent so that people could interpret it in her favor. A pitiful pregnant girl among powerful men. That image made everyone want to protect, and because of that, they didn't realize that she was the one controlling the game. Brooke became more and more suspicious, but every time she tried to speak up, Bill silenced her with his eyes. She felt excluded from the story, and that made her angry. Brooke felt a familiar emotion rising inside her, the desire for power. She decides to investigate Luna, but instead of finding a weakling, she encounters a chillingly cunning opponent. Luna is fearless, even making Brooke question whether she is protecting Will out of love or because she wants to possess Bill again. Hope, meanwhile, feels tormented. She met Luna at a random pregnancy checkup and saw in her eyes the light she once had, the light of a woman who knows she's winning. On a rainy evening, all secrets are pushed to the limit. Will wakes from a dream to find Luna standing in the doorway, soaking wet, her hands on her belly. She says nothing, just looks at him, a look that is both pleading and accusing. Bill walks in, faces them, and in that moment, everything falls apart. There are no excuses left. Bill knows that if he continues to hide, they will be drowned. But if he exposes them, his reputation and his family will be destroyed. Luna bowed her head, tears mingling with the rain. But there was no remorse in her eyes, only cold calculation. Brooke, Hope, Liam all arrived, each with their own fears, and in the chaos, Will quietly walked out of the house, into the darkness like a fugitive from his own conscience. The story was not over, because the pregnancy was still there, and the secret was not yet fully revealed. Luna now held in her hands something no one dared to confront. A truth that could destroy the Spencer family. Bill sat alone in the dark room, listening to the rain tapping on the glass, feeling the coming retribution. He had believed that power could cover up all mistakes, but now he realized that human sin could not be buried by money or prestige. Will was lost in the darkness of sleeping pills and broken memories, and Luna, the woman carrying a new life, had become a symbol of both life and destruction. As the last light faded, only one question remained hanging in the rainy night. Would the child in Luna's womb be atonement, or eternal proof of an unforgivable sin? The air in the Spencer house became thick, as if the luxurious glass walls surrounding it had turned into distorted mirrors reflecting a truth no one wanted to look directly at. Luna entered the dark room, carrying a secret that could shatter the Spencer family in a single breath. Will stood still, not understanding that the moment she opened her mouth would change the entire trajectory of his life. The truth came like a slow knife, stabbing deep into the intersection of honor and loyalty, a relationship buried in the past, an unacknowledged child, or worse, a dark deal between Bill and Deke, a man once banished from the Spencer empire, now returning like a ghost with an unpaid debt. Luna didn't need to scream, just a soft breath for Will to understand. Everything he had believed in was about to collapse. He felt the floor shake beneath his feet, not from fear, but from the knowledge that he had been placed in a game where all paths led to loss. Protecting your reputation means continuing to lie, and standing up for your morality means destroying the very blood that gave birth to you. Bill stood upstairs, looking down through the glass, feeling every movement in his son's body. He had thought Will the purest version of himself, untainted, uncalculating, but now he was doing exactly what Bill had done, hiding, betraying, and then being consumed by the consequences. Deke had returned, bearing papers that would burn the Spencer family's reputation to the ground. Years of shady partnerships, secret transfers through shell companies, negotiations conducted in the dark hall were about to be revealed. Bill knew that if the secret were exposed, Spencer Publications would lose not just its shares, but its soul. He tried to keep his composure, but inside, a monster of panic was rising. Luna knew this. She knew her power lay not in love, but in fear. And Will, weak, conflicted, wounded, was the perfect tool. She appealed to his protectiveness, making him believe she was in danger, that only he could save her. But in reality, he was saving his family from the destruction she was about to unleash. Luna had seen the documents, knew that Bill had signed a deal with Deke that guaranteed ownership of an offshore oil field, something the law would never allow. In return, Bill had helped Deke avoid prison, but now Deke wanted more. He wanted publicity, fame, the status he had lost. And Luna, somehow, was the link between those two worlds. Will began to fall apart in silence. He tried to believe he could do things right, but every step he took only pushed him deeper into the gray zone where there was no right or wrong. Every time he looked into Luna's eyes, he saw a reflection of himself, a man slowly losing the line between love and sin. Little did he know, somewhere else in the city, Sheila was watching. Sheila, the woman who had survived countless unmaskings and rejections, had become a ghost of her past mistakes. She looked at Will with the eyes of someone who knew how love could be turned into a weapon. For Sheila, Will falling in love with Luna was not an accident. It was a chance. From the shadows, Sheila manipulated like a chess master. She leaked information to Deke, making him believe Luna was cheating, then whispered in Luna's ear that Will would never protect her if the secret was exposed. Each word was like a rope, tightening until it was no longer clear who was telling the truth and who was lying. Bill began to lose control. He had people follow Deke, blocked funding sources, arranged for documents to disappear. But the more he erased, the more they were revealed. Those close to him began to suspect, shareholders began to gossip, and the media began to sniff. A small crack was spreading throughout the Spencer empire. During sleepless nights, Will quietly wandered the mansion, listening to the wind whistling through the windows and feeling as if the whole house was whispering accusations. He thought of his mother, the woman who had taught him to live by principles, and then looked at the present where principles no longer had a place. Luna appears in his dreams, sometimes gentle, sometimes fierce, but always in control. She teaches him how to lie honestly, how to love with fear, and how to survive in Bill's world, where everything has a price. The nightmare culminates with Dick sending him a formal threat. Either Bill hands over control of this state, or he will make the evidence public. Will sees the letter on his father's desk and knows it's all over. He's faced with two choices: protect Spencer's reputation by continuing to hide it, or go public and let everything fall apart, but at least save his conscience. Luna urges him to choose the former, while Sheila, through a hidden channel, whispers the latter. Every woman is a temptation, every temptation a pit. Bill calls an emergency meeting, but when he speaks, Will is the first to stand. His eyes trembled, not because he was afraid of his father, but because he knew that this time he would be the one to decide the fate of his family. Bill's anger, Deck's coldness, Luna's evil smile, all of them seemed to blend into a dark symphony. Somewhere Sheila watched on the screen, her eyes shining like someone witnessing the apocalypse she had predicted. In that moment, Will understood. Sometimes the sin lies not in what we do, but in how long we stay silent. He looked at his father, the man who had taught him that power can protect everyone, and for the first time saw Bill weak. The meeting ended in silence. No gunshots, no screams, just the sound of the clock's hands turning. Each small circle seemed to tighten around their necks. When night fell, Luna sat alone in the apartment, gently stroking the old contract that Dick had left. She did not know that Sheila was standing behind the glass, watching her as if she had just sown the seeds of a new war. In Spencer's world, love is never just love, it's a strategy. And everyone, whether they know it or not, is just a pawn in someone's hand. The last light goes out, leaving a thick silence. In that darkness, only one question hangs in the air, a question that no one dares to answer. When the secret is exposed, who among them will still stand? And who will be the first to collapse under the weight of what they want to hide?